Hey guys, Tyler Mahoney here with Truman Lake Fishing Intel. I got my buddy Darin Lankford here on the video, and we were gonna chat a little bass fishing here late spring, early summer, post spawn patterns, and maybe get into a little bit of what the summer bite's gonna look like and whatnot. So, Darin, how's it going, man?
Going good. How are you doing, Tyler?
Well, doing great. We were just getting stuff sorted out here a little bit ago for the old wedding that my fiance and I have coming up. Looking at tuxes and stuff. So glad to be
Awesome.
glad to be talking about fishing though now.
Yep.
But no. So you and Hunter are have been kind of off the lake here the last several weeks, almost a month, because you're fishing the American Crappie Trail Tournament, and you'll get to practice some this week. But um, you are an avid bass fisherman and have fished Truman for many, many years. So I thought it'd be great to pick your brain a little bit about right now what the lake conditions are, and based on your experience, what kind of things you might be doing out there to find those bass.
Yeah. Like you said, I've been off the water for a while. I don't like this at all, but it's been 30 days since I've been on the water. I can go back Tuesday next week, but been watching the lake levels, and of course they were rising, and it looks like they've pretty well leveled off now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we'll probably start seeing a little fall start here shortly, and they'll start drawing it down. But right now it is going to be awesome bass fishing for, I mean, probably a month. This current and stuff will really ignite the lake when it comes to bass fishing and occasional bonus walleye,
Mm-hmm.
this time of year. The fish really gang up. They'll be pulling out of their spawning pockets. It's pretty late. The spawn's mostly over. I'm sure there might be a straggler or two, but if you're going to go down bass fish, probably start concentrating on post spawn spots. They're going to be pulling out. They're really going to pull on these points big time. These pull points, what they call pull point, a lot of current. They call it pull points. That old water pulls across it, pulls that bait across there, and then bass just sit there and gorge themselves. The neat thing about right now is you pull up on a point, and it's a fairly large point, but once you find that sweet spot and you catch one, you might catch 15 to 20 fish and sitting in one spot and not have to leave, and they'll be good ones.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be some big. There's a tournament coming. I believe there's one Sunday, Joe Bass, and that lake, if they're drawing some current, it'll take a good stringer. You'll see some big stringers coming in here in the next month or two. For guys that don't tournament fish, it's still a great time to fish because the bushes and trees are in the water. You got things to throw at. Just fish them points, them same pull points, and you can flip bushes, fish willows. Look for the points of the bushes and the points in the little pockets of the bushes. Same way with the willows. You don't have to necessarily be on a point, a land point. Just it can be a tree point,
Mm-hmm.
or like that. It serves the same purpose. Just gives the fish a place to ambush.
Right. And so essentially, because the lake's 10 feet high right now, so the lake has become dramatically bigger, giving them a lot more space to be. And you read this all the time when you've got miles of buckbrush on the bank, picking out that one little outlier, exactly what you're talking about, those points of the buckbrush can be really good. Are you focusing when it's a really sunny day? Are you throwing into the shady part of the bush? Does that come into play at all?
It will, especially when it's in the bush. I would just soon it was out of the bushes and at normal pool and pulling some current.
Mm-hmm.
And then fish get more on the contour lines and little breaks and ledges. In the bushes, they can still scatter like they do in the spring, but yeah, look for the ones that got some shade in them, some mass, and then the fish might they'll have to tell you what they want. If they're not in chase mode, you'll have to flip right in the bush. A lot of times this time of year, you can flip just in front of the bush and just yo-yo it out and they'll chase it out, or flip beside it. But you get into, if it's real bright and calm like it is today, I mean, you would probably have to go in the bush.
Gotcha.
You flip, something like a big old 10-inch worm,
Mm-hmm.
this is a 10.5-inch red bug worm, or one of my favorites still spring and post spawn is the brush hog. You put it on a big 5/0 hook and depending on your current, it's the same way. You don't want to mess around with it. You don't want to flip in the current, take your line, because you don't have a heavy enough weight. Go ahead and put the heavy weight on it and get it to the bottom and get it down in there.
Now, when you say heavy weight, are we talking something like a 1/2 ounce, a 3/4 ounce, an ounce? How heavy are we talking?
I would at least 3/4.
Okay.
And go to if needed, but at least 3/4. You want the bait to fall straight. If you see your line drifting, you need to get a heavier weight, because all that does is drifts it through more limbs. And when you do get a bite and set the hook, you're never going to get him out there.
Right.
You want more of a straight presentation.
So those plastics, the red shad, the red bug, I've heard that's a popular color. As far as your setup goes, when you're dropping those baits in there, everyone's got their personal preference. I'm just kind of curious what your preference is on rod and line selection.
Well, if I'm flipping bushes and willows and brush on the thick brush and in grass or whatever on a point, this time of year I'll use a 1 ounce sinker with a 5/0 hook, and I use 25-pound Seaguar line.
Yep.
And that's just pretty well what I've went to flipping, and I like to use 25-pound when I'm flipping in there, and I use 25-pound flipping most of the time. When I can get away with not fishing in the brush, I'll drop to 20. Once it gets out of the bushes and that, I'll drop to 20-pound, just because you'll set back and cast more, and 20 pounds tends to cast a little bit easier than 25 does. So, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that. You don't have to on Truman. A lot of guys will say, "Oh, I use 15." Well, Truman's too dirty. Even the clear parts of Truman, it's dirty. It doesn't affect you. If you're on Table Rock or Stockton or Palmy, something like that, yeah, maybe. Fish don't see that good. They do see good, but they don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. I've seen them pros say that don't cut your knot off too short, when you tie it on there. So you don't have to they're not going to see that little 1/4 inch of line, extra line you got sticking there, you're not. Leave a little room. So I don't think line is such a big deal. Get something you can cast well and you feel comfortable with. But 25 pound. I don't use braid. I do on top water. Like if I'm throwing, the big whopper plopper or a big spook, something like that, I'll use braid, which this time of year, early, or if it gets cloudy, or just right now, it don't have to be either. It can be sunny. They're catching a lot of fish on top water right now, especially up in this grass, because them fish will stay fairly shallow. They're not out there real deep. They like grass and bushes. They're not going to get out there. Now, once it gets out of the bushes, you'll want to go to this is a DT16. This is one of my favorite crankbaits, favorite color and everything. It dives down there pretty good, and I will throw my crankbaits on 15 just to get that depth. I think they run better with 15. I don't drop any lower than that. I don't like to throw them when there's bushes in the water, because it's not going through that.
Right.
This, you can even go up to, this is a 6 cents 300. It's more like the DD22 that you hear about. The one key thing that I think that that guys got to watch for. My daughter's coming in, so
Okay.
but one key thing you got to watch for. One thing I've noticed that the crankbait bites a lot better when they're pulling current.
Mm-hmm.
You'll go through a day, they might crank the water up at 1 o'clock and have it shut off all morning. You won't get a bite on a crankbait. But then, boy, when they crank that water up, then fish get real active, and a crankbait can be the key. But there's a lot of Carolina rig. I do fish some Carolina rig. I would just soon fish a stand-up jig head with a big worm, or the brush hog on football head style jig that will actually stand up
Mm-hmm.
like so. And I'll even use a brush hog trailer. I'll buy just a little bit of it off and thread it on there, and gives you a big profile bait. This time of year, you're fishing for big fish. They're eating big gizzards, stuff like that, and big crawdads. Just fish big baits. Go
Yeah.
for the big.
Well, it sounds like that's what it's going to take anyway here coming up when fishing gets really good. And I know you've talked about summertime on Truman, and that's why most of our bass reports on the website we don't really have a lot other until right now through the summertime, because Truman's just kind of a summertime lake. And I know you've talked about that.
It's dynamite in the summer. This from that right now all the way through till about October. October, there's a little lull when it kind of shifts from summer to fall. I mean, you can still catch them, but there's a little lull. But it's from June throughout. I mean, it usually takes 20 plus pounds to win any tournament.
Wow.
And you better a live well full of big ones.
Yeah. Now, do you prefer some of the cleaner water, which is typically found on the lower end, or what kind of do you have a favorite arm of the lake? I memean, what's kind of your recommendations there? I mean, there's a lot of stuff to choose from on the Pommy, the Osage, the Tebow, the Grand.
Yes, it's. I do prefer a little bit clearer water right now.
Mm-hmm.
The fish are out just a little bit, once it goes out of the bushes. So I like the clear water because you can get with top water, and you can use a little more natural colored baits. I've caught them in the dirty water. I'm not going to tell you they're not there. We've caught them there's plenty of pull points in the upper ends of these tributaries and rivers, and they can really load up on them, and because they don't get the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But the lower end of the lake is typically where I like to fish this time of year, from not quite, well, basically from Bucksall to the dam,
Mm-hmm.
pretty well from ZZ Bridge and the Osage to the dam area. Palmy, you can go a little higher in Palmy just because it stays a little clearer, typically in the upper end. But mid arms to the dam, and same way at Tebow.
Mm-hmm.
Just all that lower end stuff. And a lot of the reason is it's all current related right now. Everything's going to be current related for the next month. You can't just go fish right now and catch fish. You got to know where that current is. You got to find that current, and the lower end will have current quicker and last longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it's just, and it'll be stronger down there too. So you'll have to, make sure you got a heavy enough stuff to keep in bottom contact. You want to always keep on contact with the bottom best you can.
Yeah. Well, and with that current we're talking about, honestly, it could be really good for the riprap of the dam. I mean, David McCormick, when he finished 6th place here a couple weeks back, they were cranking water. It was out of control. He said you'd cast your whopper plopper and it would just start floating along that riprap. And he said the boat was going almost 5 miles an hour at one point without the trolling motor going because the current was so strong. I know they did really good on that riprap, and probably just because they were on there, bait fish getting sucked by pretty quick, and that kind of stuff really be good. So, but like you said, it sounds like the current is very important. I just just got to thinking about topwater, because all the reports that I've been hearing lately is topwater has been really good, especially in the mornings. And have you heard much of any kind of hollow body frog bite in the bushes? I had a little report here earlier this week that in some of that buckbrush, if you find a lane that you can skip it up in there, you might have some action. But I don't think a lot
Yeah.
of people do fish a hollow body on Truman much.
No, they don't, but it's really good. I'll fish it if I get into the grass,
Hmm.
grassy area. I don't do much through the bushes, but I do fish it in the grass. But this is an awesome bait here. It's got the little
Yeah.
tail on it.
Yep.
I like this better than I do the popping frogs.
Hmm.
I fish them a lot in my pond.
Yeah.
I mean, they just swallow it. They
Yeah.
can't. It'll work great on Truman too.
Yeah.
But no, most of the time it's the spook, it's the whopper, the big whopper blopper.
Hmm.
That's what guys fish a lot. But no, these are really good, and these are good early. The reason you're hearing some of that is because there's still some fish trying to spawn
Hmm.
or spawning and moving out, so they're not all out yet. So you take these and you can go fish in the back of some pockets, some spawning pockets, where it'd be more grassy
Hmm.
back there, and you can find fish on these and catch them.
Yeah. And one of the details of that little report I heard was they were actually throwing a frog, and I don't know if it was a frog like that. I think it was just a hollow body frog, to be honest, up in the bushes. But also they got into the backs of some pockets after all this rain, and there was a bunch of debris stacked in the backs of the pockets, and they were throwing up into the debris. And
Yep.
kind of a pain in the butt to get the fish out of that kind of stuff. But they were getting hit up in that debris, with bass just sitting under it.
Yeah. Then I haven't done it on Truman, but years ago, when I was fishing the Heartland Pro Am, I used fishing in the amateur side, the non-boater side, which is an awesome way for people to learn how to bass fish and learn lakes,
Hmm.
run lakes, learn different ways and people's different ways they fish. And I fished the Heartland Pro Am on the amateur side, and I drew a guy down at Bull Shoals, which is clear lake.
Hmm.
Usually fishing real deep and out on steep banks and drop offs way out in the middle of the lake. But he was flipping trash mats, which is what we call them. It just blowed up debris and
Yeah.
sawdust, and he was just flipping 1 ounce, an ounce and a quarter. He'd flip it right up on top of the mat and it just fall through. And he was fishing 2 foot of water, shallow, and he won the tournament
Interesting.
doing it. And but that was on Bull Shoals where you could see 35 foot deep most of the time.
Hmm.
Flipping them trash mats back in them little cuts, just where it blew up. And you can do that on Truman. We've caught a lot of fish doing it, but you can throw for frogs on top of it. Truman gets a lot of brush in their mats, so it's a little harder for the fish to blow up through it.
Hmm.
Like you see them all the time fishing them frogs on top of grass and them mats. Truman's got so much wood in it. A lot of times it's better if they're blowing up on that, them mats are probably loaded with fish underneath them. You can flip something heavy
Yeah.
that would fall through that mat and really catch them.
Yeah. Well, that's great to know. Now, I wanted to ask you. I wanted you to share a little bit about kind of your rig, your boat, and your setup with your electronics, everything about it, and kind of how you're using that to help and aid in getting to the right spots.
Well, I've been running 21-foot boats since I started tournament fishing. I mean, and you don't have to have a 21-foot boat, but it's sure nice when you get on some of these big bodies of water, Lake
Yeah.
Ozark, some of them, it's rough. Truman's getting to be pretty rough, especially this time of year.
Hmm.
It's getting busy all the time. I run a Z21 Nitro right now. I've run a lot of different brands of boats. It just depends on which one I want to go with that year. But
Yeah.
I've run now for 5 or 6 years, fished in a lot of Phoenix and Rangers and all of them, and they've all got their goods and bads, and they're all good. But I run a 36-volt trolling motor, and I run that, and I'll run that if I had a 20-footer. If I had a 19-footer, I'd still run it. You can't never have too much trolling motor.
Mm-hmm.
So you get in this current, just like them guys fishing on that riprap. You go all day long without firing that big motor up and running that riprap, fighting that current all day. It'll wear and tear on your batteries. You got that big 36-volt, it handles that a lot better. Usually this time of year, if you don't have a trolling motor with spot lock, the next time you buy one, you need to really look at getting it.
Mm-hmm.
This time of year, spot is just awesome. It's one of the best things I've ever done. You just hit that button and it'll hold you right there within a 4 or 5 foot area. And you can just leave it and get it on the back deck. You don't have to fight the waves. You don't have to fight the wind. It'll just hold you there. You get on the back deck and just fish.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fine thing. I do run Humminbird at my console, and I've got 360 Mega on the front, and I also have Garmin LiveScope on the front. You don't have to have all that stuff to catch fish, but it helps.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while to learn how to use it, but it can help. And that's all you're looking for if you're tournament fishing is help. But if you're not tournament fishing, you're out just fishing, you don't have to have it to catch fish. But anything helps.
Right.
One thing I will say, all the boats I've always had Mercury motors. They're, in my opinion, there's no motor any better. I've run them for years. They're strong. They get good fuel mileage. I just have had little to no problems with them ever. And they make a fine product. And that's why you see so many. You don't hear about them struggling. There's a lot of them, and a lot of boat manufacturers run them, and that's probably 80% of the boats you see are running Mercuries, and there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking, make sure it's got that Mercury on it, and you'll be in good shape.
Yeah. Now, do you have power poles on your boat?
Yes, I do right now. I have power poles, and right now it'll be a little rough using them because you'll be fishing. Normally the water's going to be too deep to use them now, but come this summer, when this water gets down and stabilizes, and these fish start moving up on flats and stuff, that's when I really like to fish, because I can start throwing my square bill crankbaits and fishing shallow again. And them power poles, they're great then, because you're only fishing 3 or 4 foot of water, and you can hold and really fish that lay down. You need to hit them lay downs 4 or 5 times. The one cast isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
You hit it a couple different times, couple different angles.
Yeah.
But that power poles are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because there's probably a lot of guys, especially guys that might just be fun fishing, cruising down the bank and put a cast here, put a cast there. I imagine that there's a lot of guys that aren't picking that lay down apart. So it's a really good point that you just made with, throwing at the end of the lay down, the back of the lay down, and every which way on each side of it. Do you have a strategy when you are making 4 or 5 pitches up on a lay down? Are you hitting the front end of it first, the back end of it first? How do you break that down?
I try to make my first cast count, because the reason I do is too many times guys get in a hurry before they get in line with that lay down, because you want to come right down the side of the lay down.
Mm-hmm.
Too many times they'll try to cast that lay down, especially if their buddies are fishing with them. They'll want to beat them to that lay down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 9 times out of 10, you'll get hung up on thing, and then you run it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't do it, then your buddy can't really cast to it the way he needs to. So get your boat in position where you can cast parallel to that lay down, right down the side of it, and make your perfect cast. Throw it all the way up to the end of it and come right down it. Then I just go to work on it. I'll hit both sides. I'll throw over the top of it. I'll come across it, especially if it's in a good spot and it's a lay down I've caught fish on before, I'll hit it from every direction. And we might throw out it 4 or 5 times. And I learned that from the guy I fish with. I mean, I have seen him relentlessly make multiple casts, and I'm sitting back there cracking open my pop and eating a candy bar. Like, are we going to move on? And next thing I know, on his 7th flip to it or cast to it, he's caught a 5-pounder. And I'm like, well, good grief.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to get that right bounce and get that reaction strike. And that's just, you gotta hammer on it. I watched, just to say that, we was fishing a buddy tournament years ago and caught an 805 in a tournament.
Dang.
Off a lay down, and I didn't catch it. My partner caught it, and he caught it behind me. And I bet I made 5 or 6 casts of this lay down and reeled down the side of it, both sides of it, and on, over it, and blah, blah, blah. And he was flipping behind me, and I was throwing a moving bait, nothing. And I'd been catching him pretty good all day on that moving bait. And he flipped in there one time. I mean, I had that fish so mad and aggravated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he set the hook, and it was an 805. But I bet we made, that would have been our 6th or 7th approach to that lay down.
Wow.
So, especially this time of year, if you catch one and you're out there fishing, you catch one, especially if it's a good one. If it's a 3-pounder or above, just stop. Don't go any farther and keep making a cast, to that same spot. I mean, I've seen times where this time of year, once you find them, they might be in a little dinky spot, but once you find that spot and you catch one, you can sit right there and catch 10 to 15, sometimes 20, and not have to leave. And then they'll die off for a while, and you just sit there, and they'll fire back up later on. You don't have to go. Once you find them, you can pretty well lock down.
Now, when you do pull one off of a lay down, is there a chance that you cast right back to that lay down and catch another one, or does that first one kind of ruin it?
I have a pet peeve. If we catch one on a spot, we make another cast there, at least one. We don't just leave it. I don't care if it's in a bush. I don't care what it. I don't anything. We make the exact identical cast right back in there.
Yeah.
Because they will be grouped up, and I've seen it happen. I've caught one out of a bush before, and actually flipped right back in there and caught one the same size. Catch multiple 4-pounders in a treetop or on a lay down, and you catch just multiple fish. So don't never just, if you catch one, you did something right. It's one of your 1,000 casts, you caught one. So do it again.
Right. Yep.
And make a mental note. Just every time you catch one, make a mental note of what you've done and where he was at and how deep he is. It's like these crankbaits, if you go out there and you catch them, but you notice you're catching them all on the back hook, and they're just barely stuck, or you're losing, you're hooking up and you're losing. You're real close to the thing they want. You might just need to change color just a little bit. You might just need to go to a different brand that has a little bit different wobble, but pretty well the same depth. So them fish, they'll attack it once you see it and they've got it in them, in their mouth all the way. You've got the right setup.
Right. I want to ask you this. David Ryan is a big fan of having the red hook on the front treble. Is that something that you kind of subscribe to, that way of thinking as well?
Well, I never did until David Ryan told me about it. I do. I don't have any on these right now. I do have them in my box. I've got a whole box full of treble hooks that I keep in case they get dull or bent like this one.
Yeah.
I'm sure my this one up and bent the hook, so I'll have to get a new hook for it. But and I'll put red hooks on the front, especially if I'm catching them. I don't change it. But if I've noticed they're biting the back of this, and I switch to this and can't get bit, or I change colors and can't get bit, then I'll change to a red hook on the front.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I tell you what, I never believed him, because on square bills, almost all my square bills have red hooks on the front.
Mm-hmm.
I never believed him. I'm like, that bait is moving too fast for them fish to key in on a red hook.
Yeah.
And if you got a red hook on, you're going to have him by that red hook every time. It's
wild.
yeah. I'm surprised he told you that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I happen to notice it when I've been out fishing with him, and he opens up his box, and then there's a red hook on every single one, and I had to ask him, like, so, what's the deal here? Because I've seen red hooks, not like that was a new concept, but the way he had it set up was kind of new to me, and he kind of explained
and
gave
and every fisherman has their own little tricks and trades that a lot of it they won't share.
Yeah.
But they will, and that's one of Ryan's, and it works. And Ben's, he shared it with you. I'll tell you, it'll change the way you hook up, and you'll quit losing so many fish on crankbaits.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they'll throw this green pumpkin, but they'll dye it. They want to dye the tail.
Mm-hmm.
A lot don't. Green pumpkin with a dyed tail is awesome. I dye my tail religiously almost.
Yeah.
There's just all different kinds. Some people they'll throw the football head jig, that stands up, but then some people just throw the jig head with a big worm on it.
Mm.
Some people, they'll cut all the skirting off and just throw it with just a worm.
Uh-huh.
Everybody's got their own little tricks, and you get out there and you find something you like.
Yeah.
Bass can get finicky. There's no doubt about it. So one little dinky magic marker mark or something on there can change the way they bite.
Well, and part of it too has got to be just the mental confidence, and what gives you the confidence that they're going to bite, and that can just change your whole attitude throughout the day. So I know you're familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. You go a long time without a bite, and you're throwing something maybe that you don't normally throw a whole lot of, or then you're like, gosh darn it, why am I not throwing my thing that I really like? And then all of a sudden it's like your mind's back into it. You're starting to take your time, you're focused again, and that really all comes into play. So
yeah, and if you want to go catch fish, this is an awesome time to throw shaky heads. Post on is a tremendous time to throw shaky head worms. Just a do nothing worm, 6-8 inches long, with a ball head jig head with a screw lock. And it's a simple, easy way to fish. And you can catch lots of fish. If you're going out just fun fishing and want to catch fish, you can do that. Yeah. But have your top water tied on. It don't have to be a whopper plopper. It can be a spook. A pop R works great. Buzzbait's working great right now. It will work great. If you struggle with one thing, I wanted to tell you another little deal, kind of like the red hook. When you're throwing top water, if they're blowing up on it, not getting it, which happens a lot, you'll see them blow this thing plumb out of the water. Yep. You can't do it on deep. You can downsize or change colors or change retrieve, but like on your spooks and your pop R's and stuff, might need to put a feather hook on the back. A feather hook I've seen make a ton of difference, just a little white feather on the back. So there's just all kinds of little tricks you can that'll help you. But pretty well, I just try the basics until the fish tell me whether or not they like it.
Right.
And if they like it, if they're blowing up on it, not getting it, I'll start changing and trying to figure out what they do like. Yeah. The same way.
Well, it's a lot of good stuff. That gives a lot of folks some good stuff to go on, try, experiment with. And I'm kind of curious. I wanted to get your thoughts. One other thing more on the crappie side, since we do have that American Crappie Trail coming up. And I'm just kind of curious what your predictions are. I know there's going to be a lot of boats there. And curious to see what kind of weights you think it's going to take. I mean, they just had that Truman Lake Tournament series, and only one team had double digits. You and Hunter had a tournament last fall. You had 14 pounds and finished, I think, what, third place? And goodness gracious, I mean, that was a hell of a tournament. What do you think now that obviously the crappie spawn's done with? They're having a little bit of recovery time. What kind of weights you think it's going to take? And just curious about your general thoughts on how that whole tournament's going to go.
Well, unlike the bass, the crappies tend to scatter way that bad when the water gets up like this, because there'll be some go to the bushes, some will go stay out there where they're at, some will just go up and suspend like I don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
You seen that tournament last weekend, which was a lot of good fishermen in that, and that one stringer double digit, that's the last time you'll see that this year.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we have another time when the lake's rising. The lake was rising when that tournament comes, and when this lake's rising, fishing is tough, especially when it's already up. It can get ultra tough, but it's stabilized now and it'll start falling. And I don't think you won't see any 14-pound stringers, I don't think, but you'll see, I can't really tell you because I haven't been out so long, but it'll take 12, 13 pounds
Mm-hmm.
a day. It's 2-day tournament. I bet it takes 25 pounds to win.
Yeah, and you stand to win quite a bit from what I understand. So a $25,000 first place prize, that's not chump change.
Oh, and then if you turn around the very next weekend, you have Crappie Masters Nationals are coming 2 days, also the very next weekend. So the old lake's going to the old crappie's going to get hammered the next couple weekends.
Yeah.
But so I've got ACT Friday and Saturday, and then Joe Bass Sunday, and then turn around the very next weekend and got Crappie Masters Nationals Friday and Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a job. I just got to take off. My boss pretty lenient about that sometimes.
Yeah.
But
yep, that's always a great thing. So, well,
we're fired up.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys are just dying to get back out on the water. So that'll be a nice little change of pace to get back out there.
I hope the boat starts. I haven't tried it. I'm sure it will.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot. I think that's a good note to end on. And for those that are watching this, if you ever have questions for Darin or for anyone else on the website, or any topics you want us to cover in the future, write in. There's contact page. You can message the Truman Lake Fishing Intel page, and we'll do our best to cover as much as possible and keep trying to get up as many bass fishing reports to go along with all of it as well. So but yeah, thanks again to Darin Lankford. You can find him on our website. He's got a little profile, and he's on Facebook as well. So be sure to follow him and everything he's doing. And we'll look forward to catching you guys all on the next one.
Thanks, Tyler.